Hi, everyone. Rick Ganelli here, Director of Music Administration Outreach, and welcome to another First Wednesday. Happy New Year. If you notice, it's just a little bit different. Instead of doing a webinar where you can't see each other and we can't see you, we're doing a full-fledged Zoom. So we can hopefully encourage people to emphasize the C in Music Administration Collaborative and do a little bit more collaboration throughout our sessions this semester. Before we get started, I want to bring Beth Horton back on the screen here to talk to you about a few things going on Conselmer-wise. Beth?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate your time and everyone for being here this evening. We just love the MAC. We have got some exciting things happening right now at Conselmer Division of Education. On Monday, we launched our music educator masterclass. It's very exciting. So we have a couple of things that we want you guys to mark on your calendars. That first, of course, is our music educator masterclass that launched on Monday. And right now we're offering early bird pricing. So it's half price for $49 instead of $99 until March. This is 8 hours plus of professional development content offered by some of our amazing clinicians. Our students or our registrants will receive professional development certificates once they've completed 100% of the course. It's on demand, so they can complete it together as a group, or people can complete it individually at their own pace, which is fantastic. And we recognize that this would be really an excellent opportunity for school districts for professional development as well. And so we are able to offer special pricing for school districts who want to purchase it for all of their educators. Some of our awesome clinicians that we have invited to talk to educators for Q1 about rehearse and renew. So applicable, actionable rehearsal strategies, and also strategies for educators to renew their teaching and to help them establish solid work-life balance. So you'll hear from Tim Latzenheiser, Dr. Crater, Nikki Smith Jr., Frank Troika, Richard Saucedo, Alex Shapiro, and Dr. Johnston Turner. So a really excellent group of educators. And again, that's on demand. So you can purchase it and start working on it right now and get 8 hours of professional development certification for $50, which is pretty fantastic. Also, we are so excited to continue announcing that Conselmer Institute is going to be back in person this spring in June, from June 12th to 15th in Mishawaka at Bethel University, just like always. It's also going to be available to attendees online. Rick is going to tell us a little bit more about what he has planned for the MAC track here at the start of our session. And then for those attendees who are going to be with us in person and online, for the first time, we're also going to be integrating an app into the experience so that you can easily keep track of your sessions, whether you're in person or online. You can join the live stream, and both in-person and online attendees will have access to all of our sessions for 90 days afterwards. So if there was something really compelling that happened in your session, you can go back and revisit that live stream as many times as you want. You're also able to chat with attendees no matter where they are, which is pretty fantastic. So we want to make sure that, like Rick said at the beginning of our meeting, that we're really emphasizing the C. We want to collaborate, we want to communicate, we want to create a community with one another. So that's everything that's going on right now in the Division of Education, and we're so excited to be sharing these opportunities with you all. I'm going to drop some links in the chat, and those will also be available after the session as well. So thank you so much for your time, Rick.
Thanks, Beth. And I'm going to go through this next little bit of housekeeping very, very quickly because I don't want to take any more time away from our fantastic guests. As Beth mentioned, we're going to bring you resources. I do not want the MAC sessions to be a commercial for anything we do. We won't ever talk about product on here, but we're going to talk about educational resources. And sometimes there is a monetary commitment on your part to do some of these things. And we're not going to push that, but we just want you to make you aware of these things. And throughout the next semester, as we talk about different things, we may be talking about different books. Again, not pushing the books, but pushing the content in the books because we think it's good for you and or your directors. And that's another thing. We're going to bring you content also that might not directly apply to you, but hopefully as a music program leader, you can take that to your directors and pass this information along if they don't have these resources available to them. As Beth mentioned, Consumer Institute this summer, there is a complete MAC track, and we get together for those 2.5 days, and we're basically together talking about all things music administration. And we've got some great people lined up for you. We haven't finalized all that yet. We should know by the end of the month, and we'll definitely make that available to you. The last thing, for those of you, and you may have seen all the emails, but if you're on the West Coast or you'd like to visit the West Coast and maybe tack on a trip to Disneyland, Southern California School Band and Orchestra Association is allowing us to host another MAC session. It'll be on January 21st. We've got some great presenters for that as well. And it will be about from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It's $35 in that, but that includes lunch and drinks all day long. So if you're out there or you'd like to travel out there, please join us, and we'll make sure we drop that information in the chat. So now that we don't take any more time, I want to introduce my very, very good friend, Tom Bracey. If you were to happen to see a little misprint yesterday where it said we were going to have Tom Brady on, that is not correct. It's just one letter off. This is Tom Bracey, much better presenter. He has not deflated any footballs as far as I can tell. And, Tom has more degrees than a thermometer. So he's a wealth of information, and I've seen him present a number of times. And so, Tom, thank you for being here, and it's all yours, my friend.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming today. Rick, I have to chuckle when you said more degrees. I'm looking at Kathy Leibinger, who, we competed for how many degrees we were going to go for a while there. And she's saying, no, she didn't go on there. And of course, the illustrious Dr. Tim is with us. I appreciate the opportunity. Just real quick introductions before I start. For those of you that do not know me, I am Tom Bracey. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I have been a band and orchestra director now for 30 years. My advanced degrees are in marketing and finance. So I have an MBA and do a lot of marketing and finance, as well as a few others degrees that I don't often use, but I use those most often. And when I'm not behind a bunch of elementary and middle school kids conducting, I am generally thought of as somebody in the marketing, communication, and fundraising field. Currently run a small consultancy called the Bracey Group, where we're doing a number of cool things right now, including launching a nonprofit music school for the Steinway Society in Reno, Nevada, and working with Hastings Public Schools on their strategic plan. And then I'm the VP of Advancement, Marketing, Communication, and Fundraising for Elkhart County's Horizon Education Alliance. So try to keep busy, and in between still teach at a collegiate level. So I'm hoping what I'm going to do today will resonate with some of you or all of you. As I said to Rick, I've got probably, I'm sorry, I need to stop share for 1 second to make sure I turned on my sound. Okay, sure thing. I told Rick I'm squeezing about 8 hours into 45 minutes. So we'll see what we can do here. The one thing I would like to stress, though, at any time, stop me, let's talk, let's have a dialogue. I can always send, if you will, the slides, or I can talk to folks if needed at a later date to help them with other opportunities or share things as we're going along. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I've got the videos. Are you seeing the video the correct way, Rick?
Yes, let me move this chat window. It looks like you have the presenter mode on. So if you want to go and click that button, the display settings.
Yep, but I'm sorry, guys. 3 years of Zoom, and you'd think I'd have this down by now. It is not.
Like in the toolbar, the second from the left choice where it says display settings.
It's not showing on my screen. That's why I'm having trouble here.
Oh, okay. So sorry.
No, it's not anybody's fault but mine. It showed when of course we were
It worked when we
doing
were
this.
when we practiced. It sure did.
One more time. Let me try it again. Oh, hang on a second. Here we go, folks. Sorry.
Oh, you've got it. You're amazing, Mr.
I'm sorry. You all should also know that I'm a drummer. So that tells you something right there with the trombone minor. So is this working now?
Perfect. You're good to go.
Okay. So what we're going to start with today is just a simple discussion and, talk about the importance of mission, vision, and values. I won't, talk too much about this. I think everybody understands that importance. But if you don't have that mission, vision, and values in what you're doing, then there's really no way for you to really do the work you need to do, right? So you can't get to marketing, you can't get to fundraising unless you know what those mission, vision, and values are. And just a little thought, if you don't have this committed already to memory, knowing what your school district's mission, vision, and values are, or your organization, your particular program, if you haven't designed those, it's really important to go through that exercise, even if it's with your music staff or music faculty, to kind of talk about what is your mission, what are you going to do, what are the values that you're going to stick to. And I always say that they have to line up with my personal values. So I've been fortunate enough in my career that everywhere I worked, and I worked full-time for Conn-Selmer at one time, and really resonated with me the mission, vision, and values of Conn-Selmer and the Division of Education, and music for every child, which was one of the ambitions of Dr. Tim that I'm sure you're still working on. But all of that resonated with me. And if those don't line up, then it's important that I don't work for that organization. Now, what's also important is that you have all of that before you start thinking about marketing, and before you think about how to promote your brand or your organization. And the one thing that is different when it comes down to adding marketing to is you have your mission, right? Your practical, your specific, your literal, what you're doing, your vision, short, simple, what your future is going to be, and your values. What is the good work you're doing? But the difference when you add a marketing component to it is your position. What is your differentiator? How are you different? How are you adding, something of value to the world, to your community? And that all lines up with what we call brand essence, right? So that you could talk about your brand story. So I like to think of this, and feel free to chime in here or come off mute. We usually don't think of music or music education as a product, but it's a product, it's a service, right? And so sometimes educators have a hard time thinking that way, but I'm here to tell you that it's really important you think a little bit that way, because this service, this thing we're providing to the kids we serve across this country is really, really important. But more importantly, to know what product you have. So for instance, in Harley Davidson, it's really not about motorcycles. Can anybody want to chime in and tell me what they think Harley Davidson is about? And remember, I really can't see the chat, so I'm going to rely on Rick or Beth to help me with that chat. Is anybody, what is Harley Davidson about? Anybody?
Selling motorcycles.
Wrong. So that's the one thing it's not about. It's not about Cantrell selling motorcycles. It's actually about a lifestyle, about the free road, about being out in the open. There was a study many years ago done in marketing that Harley Davidson tattoos were the most widely distributed or imprinted tattoos on a human body than any other tattoos in the country. And even people that did not ride motorcycles were getting Harley Davidson tattoos because it depicted this freedom, this open air, this lifestyle. Now that's since changed. Now, my 24-year-old son has got tattoos all up and down his arms, and it's a statement of art and beauty, and he goes to different artists and gets them now. But really, it was, they say in marketing, to get a tattoo on from somewhere or a company that you value was really the epitome of that endorsement. Okay, Apple is not necessarily about computers or phones. Any thoughts on Apple's? Okay, so Apple is generally, right, obviously the functionality of a computer and phone is important, but it's the sleek design. It's a way of life, right? Just like Harley Davidson is. Apple's infiltrated our life in so many different ways. And the same thing with Starbucks. Starbucks did not start as a company just about coffee. It started as the third place. There was home, there was your place of worship, and there was Starbucks. And that was really their the real idea behind Starbucks and how they started. So all of those things are important when you're thinking about your brand or thinking about your program. What are you, or better yet, what aren't you? And I had the privilege of running a music program here in Chicago called the Merit School of Music. And we had 5,000 kids back in the day. And I remember we thought we were really smart. We added all these programs for adults, saying, okay, the adults are going to take programs and this is going to be fantastic, and so on and so forth. And I will also say that we served kids who are in need, kids who are really in the lower socioeconomic status. And most of our kids came to music instruction in school for absolutely free. So the thought there that their parents were going to come and pay a full freight didn't make any sense. So we actually eliminated parent programming after that, because for us, it wasn't who we were. We were about serving kids. So you have to know what your program is. Are you a marching band? Are you an orchestra? Are you a show choir? Are you all of the above, or what exactly is your forte there? If you look at what brand platforms are, this is just kind of a nice description of how brands develop, right? You have your platform, your values. There you see that values again. All those promises are all the people that you're promising this effort to. Are you promising a high, excellence program? Are you promising community development within your program? Are you promising a place to be, a place to grow? What is your promise? And that, in essence, becomes who you are. And I like to talk about this a little bit, the brand story drivers. Back in the day, we had a lot about customer stories and brand stories. And I always use the example. When I was a kid, we were quite poor. My mom was raising 5 kids on her own, and she was a teenage mom. And we didn't have a whole lot of money. But I remember mom would always buy Tide detergent. And for the life of me, I could never figure out why mom bought Tide detergent. And it was because of the commercials. And Tide, and to this day, has the commercials about your kids can go out, they come in full of mud, full of, things hanging all over them. And somehow dad or mom put the laundry in the washer and it comes out sparkling clean. So for my mom to spend that extra $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 on Tide was important, as she was raising 5 kids by herself on a waitress salary. So those are really the brand stories. But today we talk a lot about customer stories, and you see that a lot in Yelp and likes and retweets and social media. And it's what we're all using. We're less brand loyal now than we were 20 years ago. It's more about building these customer stories. I mention this because your program is important to your communities, and you're already building those customer stories. It's that word of mouth, it's that excellence in everything you do that is conveyed throughout the community. So a little bit about developing your brand, right? You need to have a proof of concept. That proof of concept may be, going to the Rose Bowl with your marching band. It may be winning a first or second place in the marching band competition in Texas, or in Bands of America competition. Those are your proof of concept. It might be the amount of kids that go to music school. When I ran Merit School of Music, 30% of our kids had free college tuition when they graduated. 50% went into music business, performance, or education. That was a proof of concept for us, right? Another proof of concept was having an advisory board like Yo-Yo Ma, Manny X, and some of the high-level musicians like Renee Fleming that helped us and helped support our kids. So those are all, because we were able to have an excellent program, that concept is proven. The rest of it is all gravy. It's important to have logos and websites and social media and all of the rest, but it's important that you recognize these are things that you need as well. And just some examples. I'm sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? So
Yeah.
as far as proof of concept, I know a lot of administrators these days, upper level administrators these days, want data. They want what your program is. Would you say that data is a part of that proof of concept?
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about telling stories in a moment, but yeah, data tells stories, metrics tell stories, but there's qualitative and quantitative analysis in stories, right? So there's the touchy feeling pulling from the heartstrings, and there's the hard data that tells stories. So both tell the story. You just have to be able to know how to use them and in which way to use them. If I'm going at budget time and I need to get extra dollars, I may need to use those metrics. What students got A's and B's, what students did not have disciplinary problems, what kids went on to college because they were in music. And tracking that data is important from the get-go, because if you have to build it later, it's more difficult to step backwards than to go forwards. So good question, Rick. Developing your identity, even if you're in a school district, you can develop your identity. Things like, see here, just just kind of our PMS colors, the colors that we had to have, our logo, which was kind of like a piano, an impact report, which was our report for donors, our performathon. Insert your situation and find what your identity is. Now, the difficulty in what you're doing compared to what I was doing in the community music school is you have guidelines from the district and the school as well, but that's okay. You can still build off that and kind of have what we call a sub brand, an important brand. So I just want to ask it, and this is really where I do encourage some conversation. Does anybody want to volunteer? Like, what is your product or service, or how are you telling your story right now? And what are you using to tell your story? Does anybody want to interject here at all? Be great if we could have some examples from folks.
Well, one of the things that Tom and I've talked about is I have a nonprofit. I'm logging in on that with that hat on today. And our nonprofit is all about, our tagline is basically equity. And so we're trying to bring those private lesson teachers and live accompanists into schools that can't normally afford them. So everything we do is through that equity filter.
So that's how you're telling your story. So what's your service? What's your product or service?
The service is providing basically human resources into school programs.
And would you say, Kathy, you're telling it more as a customer story or a brand story? Is it word of mouth and you're sharing, or are you saying we're the best and this is why?
It's more of a customer, I think. Yeah.
That's great. Hey, Joe Clark, I see you on. I'm going to pick on you a minute because you're the king of social media. I see you on Twitter. I see you everywhere. And you're like the consummate administrator talking about your program. You want to tell us a little bit about what you do and how you view it in your world?
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you how I crash and burn all the time? Or...
Sure. Absolutely.
No. I'll tell you what, I had a good day today. I was able to, we have about 50 principals in Spring ISD, and I presented to all of them today. And actually we took a little bit of a detour. We talked about KPIs, key performance indicators. And I said, we all need to, so I kept it short and simple. And I tried to brand everything inside the message of, we want 10% of the whole campus population of the high school into band and 10% in choir. And I said, we're aiming for, at the middle school level, 15%. And I gave them the data and I told them the story, and I gave them like the attendance, the behavior, and the academic achievement. And I had the numbers in front of them. I had their numbers and I had my numbers, and I compared them side by side. And I said, this is where we are. And can you imagine if your campus had 300 more kids attending at this level, the behavior at this level, and the achievement at this level? And so I let them paint that picture. And then at the end, we talked about what I need from them. And it was really well received. They called, and I had phone calls afterwards about how we can do it and how we're going to share. Sorry about that. And how we're going to share stories back and forth. That's what you get for calling on me, Tom.
No, well, I appreciate it though. And KPI, right? So there's your metrics Rick was talking about. So that's really important. Back in the day, nonprofits called them dashboards. Oh, everything's a dashboard. They still do, but KPI resonates not only with all the data analysts in education now, but with business. And that actually could bring in money at some point, when you're fundraising as well, or when you're working on budgets, right? So I would imagine, Joe, if somebody's KPIs are really positive and they're asking you for money, you're going to lean towards, well, maybe, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're going to lean towards that proof of concept that they're doing pretty good, right?
Absolutely. No, I love that. Proof of concept. I'm stealing that very much.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to go on marketing, and these next three, I'm not going to read definitions to you, and I'm sure I could provide slides to Rick later to share with everybody or send them out to everybody. But, I talked a little bit at the start. Why is marketing important? Well, it's a set of activities and processes creating communications and delivering exchanges, right? So, and marketing can mean a couple different things, right? If you go to market and you're selling instruments or you're selling gym shoes, that's marketing, but it's marketing sales. Marketing communications, fundraising is a type of marketing, it's a different type of sales as well. And I'll just mention two quick things here: transactional and relational marketing. In our worlds in education, we're really in relational marketing, right? Unless you're in a college can kind of go between, quasi between, because there's some transaction obviously, and they're trying to get, keep things afloat. But in our world, especially in the music world, it's about relationships. It's really about, shaking hands and giving folks hugs and saying hello to one another. I talked to Rick Maddox yesterday from Hastings, Nebraska, and he's invited me out next month. And he said, Tom, I really need you to stay in my house instead of a hotel when you're here, because I'm having my music teachers over to create community and relationships. And I want to show that we're one family. And I want to be able to, get up in the morning and pick your brain before we go out to the school for those 2 days and then come back. So it's about that relationship building, right? And it's about everything we do. And we all have the students where we can talk about those relationships and how they build. And that's what we're doing in our programs. And that's what's really important. If I had 3 steps for any music program in the world, it's really pretty simple. The first one is a quality program. And just to be blunt, if your program sucks, you're not going to get kids in your program, right? So you want to make sure that you have this quality program, however you define quality. Excellence in music is obviously something we all try to achieve. I just spent time as an interim at the People's School of Music here in Chicago, where the organization didn't actually view musical excellence as priority as much as community excellence. Now, there's some debate in that. They did pretty good in music education, but it wasn't the top music programs. But that's how they define quality programs. So what is your quality program? For most of us, though, it's quality and excellence in music. And you can hear that. And we used to talk about this all the time in the DOE. And Rick, I'm sure you and Tim and Mike and everybody still talk about this, but what music student can get a C? And, if you get a C in math or science, I'm not saying that that's good, by the way, guys, but if you do, you pass. If you get a C in band and you're playing clarinet, well, what does that really do? My daughter now is a performance major, and she'll talk about that all the time. Dad, I got to play this to the top level, and she's practicing day and night. And it's kind of cool to see that next generation come through and do that, and that importance, because her music teachers instilled that on her, right? And then second is just, how do you tell your story? How are you getting the word out, right? I view marketing as storytelling, and that's really, really important. And if we had more time, I'd go into all kinds of stories and the power of stories, but I'll tell you a little bit about how to do that, at least tonight. And then that creates awareness. And that awareness, by the way, for me, usually brings in money. I'm going to show you this. I've got a couple little clips to show you today, and this is one of them from an organization that I was working at pre-pandemic called the Harmony Project, located in Los Angeles, and I was part of their national efforts with, what do we have, 9 programs in 6 states. But just get a little idea of how they've done their video.
My name is Ari Jacinto, and I live in Los Angeles, California. I've been part of a Harmony Project for 5 years now. I play the clarinet. My parents didn't have a chance to study that much where they came from, and they came here to give me a better life. We've struggled sometimes, but we've gone through it together.
My name is Leslie Cardenas. I've been involved in the Harmony Project since I was 7 years old. I am about to be 18 next month, so basically 10 and a half years. Music gave me hope. It gave me an option to do something better with my life.
Okay, Elizabeth plays clarinet, Steven plays trombone, Martin plays the trombone, Monica plays the violin, Teresita, the youngest, she's learning the viola.
You pretty much run this place, don't you?
Yeah. This is what the kids need, away from gangs, away from trouble, from the streets.
If Harmony Project wasn't there, I don't know what I would be doing. I would probably be involved in bad stuff. Right now, I have a lot of possibilities. I want to go to college. I want to do something really good with my life. So,
this program can save the lives of many people because it takes people away from their surroundings. People who play the instruments here that are from really bad neighborhoods, that are from places where going far isn't really an option, that where you are is where you'll be forever.
It makes a difference. This is what the kids need nowadays. They need to see that there is more out there, and music is opening the doors for them to reach, to go as far as they can.
It's really helping me to develop as a person and it teaches me like hard work can lead to being good at something. It also helped me be involved in more stuff at school, like track and cross country.
Music taught me to want to do more in my life. I work for the Citywide Aquatics. I've helped coach synchronized swimming, diving, water polo. I am the girls varsity water polo captain and the varsity girls swim captain at my high school.
We play together, you know, we stay together. And we practice together, and we also try to participate in different events. And we are all one family together playing.
Harmony Project, it's a big program now, and it's all over Los Angeles. Once you're in it, you just feel like you're part of something big.
And then shift up to second. I want to continue being a part of the mentor program, teaching my kids and hopefully adding more students on. I'm more than willing to volunteer my time with this program because it gave so much to me growing up that in a sense it's my way of giving back to it.
So we'll talk a little bit about these stories, right? I'm going to show you a few as we go along and how different stories happen. But really what's important about these stories that I'm going to show you is that they're firsthand stories. And it's not me as the director, right? I was the CEO of the national program. I'm not up there saying, this is what we do and this is why it's important. It's the families and the communities and the kids that are actually experiencing the programs firsthand, talking about it. And we didn't exploit anybody. We didn't ask them to say something they shouldn't. We didn't actually even write a script. We just ran B-roll and we asked a few questions about why music was important in their life or why music was important in their communities. And you know, it was really interesting to see the outcomes, and you'll see a couple other things that I'll show you, but to see these outcomes and hear the narratives that come from them. And what's really important and why stories work is you get to know the person, you know, right? I know that young lady now. She works for the Parks and Rec. She's in college. She you know, it's really cool to see her and her family, the whole family that stays together, plays together, right? It creates this empathy. It puts a face on the kids that are actually doing it, and it differentiates your organization. And it can be any video that you choose to do. And there's all different types of video, but this is more like a branded organization video. It also generally motivates people to do something. I did one video one year at Merit, and our ROI on that video was $1 million in contributed revenue. Very unintentional, to be honest with you. As a matter of fact, my staff had argued with me about wanting to do the video because I put out administrator mode and said, we can't afford it, we're not going to do it, da, 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 da. And you know, I had a young staff member that came in every day and said, Tom, you're a marketer, we've got to do that. This is why this is important. And I got such the bug that I just kept producing these things as time went on in my career because I saw the importance of it and saw the difference it made. And that $1 million came from a $600,000 grant, a $10,000 tuba that somebody granted to one of our young men in the organization, 2 free college tuitions, and an additional program that was set up for 300 kids at another school. So that's a big impact from just one video. So think of the things you do now with the stories you have and the stories you can find, and where can you find them, right? So your faculty, your staff, parents, students, donors, board members, teachers. We used to have a principal every year that played saxophone with us, and he was terrible, but we put a saxophone in his hand and he played with the beginning band every year, and he was a rock star at the end of the concert because the kids just thought he was phenomenal. And you know, many times we've been in situations in music programs where the choir director and the orchestra director and the band directors aren't all getting along, but we're on the same team. And I was really lucky to have a general music teacher whose secondary instrument was clarinet, and she would sit in the band, you know, and when she was absent, I would teach choir, God forbid she was ever absent though, because I was a horrible choir director, but we would all help each other out, and the kids saw that, and it kept telling the story that, you know, we're one family. So these are important. I want to show you one other little clip, and I want to give you a little setup on this clip. So this is a program that I just finished some time with, about a little over a year and a half with, called the People's Music School. People's Music School serves 1,000 kids in Chicago. Every music program is absolutely free. Every instrument is absolutely free. And during the pandemic, they called me because they had a hole in their executive staff and said, we need some help getting ready. And we moved and we pivoted 850 kids at that time to online learning, probably like many of you, with a 91% attendance rate. And I'll tell you a little bit about the background that went into this to get this done in a minute, but just bear with me for one more video to see kind of an idea how this tells a story too, in a different way. I'm sorry, I thought I hit play. So I'm not going to have time to play all the other videos, but just to give you a little background, that the story within the story is 850 kids pivoted to online learning like all of your kids probably did, 91% attendance rate. To get these kids to hold their cameras the right way for videotaping was a feat in of itself. I can't tell you how much conversation we had to have. To go to online learning, 90% of our kids were from Black and Brown communities. 45% of the kids were Latinx, and English was not their first language, especially with their parents. So when we tried to pivot to a learning management system, and we developed an entire learning management system with everything from different online tools for music theory and working with Berkeley City Music Network and so many other places, it was a chore just to get the parents to understand how to do it. Right. So many of them even had email accounts. So just imagine all that work. And I know that all of you did a lot of that work too, to get them to even to this point, and then to at least have, I think we had 350 of the 850 actually record, plus our faculty recorded. It was really a feat, but it told the story, and it told the story of resiliency in our music program and the importance of community. And while the pandemic was going on, we were also sending out food cards because people didn't have groceries, and we were making home visits, and we were getting instruments repaired. There's stories within stories and stories, and that's what's really important about your brand and how you tell that story. So I'm running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here a couple more things without going through all of more videos, if you will. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my, oops.
One of the things that to me stood out, of course, the kids, but the faculty participating as well, because I think a lot of our administrators don't realize how talented our faculties really are. And that's have them showcased as well.
Well, and one of our faculty actually arranged this piece of music, because you saw we had harp and guitar and choir. And so, yeah, really we have and the faculty we had was just, it was a unique experience I had. I was there a little over about a year and 9 months. And I'm going to be 55 folks in about a week and a half. And I was the oldest on the staff. So I know I'm not as old as Rick Ganelli. I'm just kidding, Rick. But my big brother, Rick. But I will tell you that I felt so damn old. And yet I had this wonderful, young, exuberant staff that taught me a whole bunch of stuff. And hopefully I brought stuff to the table with them. And I think last year we produced about 21 videos. I mean, it's just, and many of you have too, but it tells that story. Yeah.
Well, and for those of you that are in public schools, what I always encourage too is, there are teachers on the staff that have played instruments, that you can get involved in something like this. That gets them, you've got an advocate right there. When they get in there and they start playing along with the kids and the other teachers, that's another person just to say that this is a good thing.
Yeah, we actually had the Mr. B challenge for those months of the pandemic. So I had not had all the student model instruments at the house. So I actually called Quillen and Fabish, our local dealer. I ordered a whole line of every instrument again. I was horrible at first since my undergrad days, and I practiced every instrument, and I pop into classes, and the kids would say, okay, Mr. B, we're going to challenge you today. Will you play this song for me? And I'd pull out the saxophone, and I'd be like, oh my God, let me just make it through this song. Mary Had a Little Lamb was the hardest thing in the world for me. But I did it, and we just had such great fun, and our other teachers were doing that too. And we were just showing how human we were during a vulnerable time, not to mention just the talent, as you said, Rick. So, there's just all these cool stories within stories. I'm not going to belabor the stories much more, other than to say pictures tell a lot of stories. This particular group in the right-hand corner are trumpet students from Merit School of Music that actually at the National Trumpet Competition in round 1 beat Oberlin, Curtis, and Northwestern. And there are a bunch of sophomores and juniors in high school were eliminated because we were a community music school, not a school district. And NTC felt so bad that they invited us to open for the Airmen of Note in the Air Force and flew us out. And to add, to that story, Bud Herseth, the famous trumpet player at Chicago Symphony Orchestra's family, was part of our community, and he had just passed. And Bud's son wrote a check for all the kids to go and fly on, some of them for the first time on their plane. And each student in this picture has their own story. One was autistic, One ended up, he ended up coming out during the trip because his family didn't want to accept that he was homosexual, but he felt comfortable around his music community. One is an out-of-sync child who had brain damage when he was born, and music really saved his life. One's brother was in jail for murder. I mean, it's just the stories upon the stories happen. And so I'd stand up in front of crowds to raise money and tell that story, and people take out their checkbooks, believe it or not. So there's stories within pictures, within video. There's stories, and again, I won't go through all this here. I'll just mention one more. It doesn't matter where your political beliefs are. But what's really cool is the DREAM Act. So DACA started at the Merit School of Music right before I took over. And Teresa Lee was an undocumented student. And Teresa and my predecessor went to Congress, and Dick Durbin started the DREAM Act. So regardless of your political affiliation, what's really cool is this music thing's a powerful thing, right? And so that's how things happen, and it happens musically. So I'm not going to go through much more of that, other than it's not hard to do a video. Just think of what your objectives are. Think of what your return on investment is. You want to show, not tell, right? Your story. And you can do this without breaking the bank. There's so many, I mean, our iPhones can take videos now, right? We know that they're successful videos. I'm going to go a little quick to get to a little bit of the grant writing fundraising stuff. And Rick, I'm happy to come back anytime and take deeper dives, or with anybody that wants to have an offline conversation, take a deeper dive, because grant writing, I could spend 24 hours and we still wouldn't get it, right? It's really a difficult thing. But this is essentially, how do you make videos? How do you tell your story? And how do you use that? And I'll end with, just make sure you're sharing it the right way, right? YouTube, Vimeo, TikTok is how you're making the sausage. What's going on? What's the band rehearsal look like? What does it look like when you're repairing an instrument? LinkedIn has become widely used now from a lot of people to tell the story. And when we're talking about education, it's a good story to tell through LinkedIn. It's a good resource. And I will just, again, we're not gonna have time for this real quick, but I'll just, ALS, right? Ice Bucket Challenge, everybody remembers, brought in about $115 million. The first year it failed miserably. The second year it took off. And you could see even here our staff at the time having the Ice Bucket Challenge, because we were challenged by Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And the last thing we were going to do is be embarrassed by their staff and not come up and take the Ice Bucket Challenge. And we all pitched in money and gave a donation of $1,000. So awareness, social media, what they used to call guerrilla marketing in the 90s, is really important and able to work. I'm not going to get into too much here. I've got about 10 minutes, but I'm going to try to give you a little taste of fundraising. Okay. What's really important before you fundraise, though, is to know what your school's responsibility is. Right. And I remember back in the day, Rick and I did a workshop out in California, and we found that the band directors were spending, it was, I think, more than 50% of their time fundraising. And we both threw up our arms and said, well, if you have to do that, how do you teach? Right. And what was really cool is when we left, I think we made an impact on their administration, because I don't think that they're doing that as much anymore, Rick. I'm not sure, but I know we voiced our concerns, and everybody, thought, that was really important to hear. All I'm saying to you is make sure you understand what the school's obligations are. What are your operating expenses, right? What are you getting for your budget? What's your capital expenditure? And if you need help explaining this to anybody in finance terms, give me a call, because this is really, really important. I talked to a director yesterday who said, I'm so excited. He's got 8 schools in this district, and he's the music coordinator. And he said, I had $25,000 a year for repairs. And I thought, oh my God, what do you do with that? And then he said, and I get $37,000 for new instruments. And I said, well, there's 2 bass clarinets. I mean, how does anybody think that that's a good amount of money? So sometimes teaching the teachers or teaching your administration on how to think a little differently can help. And through capital asset and capital expenditures, there's ways to get money for your school district, right? Instruments are capital assets, and just knowing things like depreciation, capital, PPE is different in this case. It's not what we're used to in this last year and a half. Property, plant, and equipment, and just speaking that geek finance speak that we're not used to as musicians. And that's one of the reasons I think I was fairly successful in getting money in my career, is getting that finance degree and being able to go in and talk to people in their terms. Right? They could talk to me about whole notes and half notes. I had to be able to talk to them about capital budgets. And I know Con Summer does a remarkable job at this, so I'm going to leave this here and let Rick follow up with you or anybody else. But also know the federal block grant funding that's out there. Everything in the ESSA, every Student Succeeds Act, everything that's part of the American Rescue Plan, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. There's a lot of money out there. A lot of the ESSER money school districts have spent already or earmarked, but it's out there. So make sure you ask about that. And really what's important here is when you're talking about fundraising is having a plan. Where are we now, right? If this is our budget, $25,000 in operational and $37,000 in capital, well, where do I want to be? Do I want to be at 250? That People's Music School that I left recently, and spent that year and a half with, we had $50,000 for instruments, $25,000 for repairs. And it wasn't until, and this is a true story, it wasn't until I went into a gymnasium and saw such bad, horrific string instruments and started stepping on them and stamping them and breaking them and throwing them in the trash, that somebody on my board didn't realize how bad they were, what horrible instruments they were. And they came out and they said, Tom, are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you angry? I'm like, no, I'm angry that kids don't have quality equipment. So we then went and we advocated for more money, and I left them with a $250,000 budget this year that we raised to get the kids all brand new instruments. So it can happen if you're really considering the plan. Maybe you don't have to be drastic like me and step on instruments and break them and do silly things, but it got the point across, right? So make sure that you're thinking about what your fundraising is. And typically, Music Booster fundraising has been, and you guys know this, selling products, candy, flowers, mattresses. Mattresses are my pet peeve because when people use mattresses as a fundraiser, what you don't realize is many parents are signing loans, right? They're signing finance charges to get those mattresses. So you might get your $5,000 at the end of the day, but they just got, instead of $800, $1,200 worth of charges that they're paying off for 2 or 3 years. What service have you done to those families? So think a little bit differently about how you're doing that. Somebody else, when I did this last workshop, said, we're selling meat, we're selling smoked sausages. All of these things that we've typically been doing in the music business and in schools are fine. They garner support and community, except mattresses. I really still have a pet peeve about mattresses. But all these other things are really kind of, they're fine, right? They get people going, bake sales, they get everybody excited. But really what we need to do is start taking a page from the nonprofit sector, right? So nonprofit fundraising is different and they have different revenue buckets. And, I was at a school 10 years ago as a band director, and somebody died and bequeathed $10 million to the school. It was because they nurtured and cultivated that relationship over and over again. And eventually they left money to the school, which included a whole new music room, right? So there are different buckets. We have individual donors, annual appeals, just from asking for money. And the last month in December, we brought in $75,000 for Horizon Education Alliance. And that was small compared to what we would do at the music school, right? So the Alliance is more like a foundation or a think tank. So it's harder to get individual gifts, but just from sending out one email, and I sent out one email on, I cultivated people the month of December, but on New Year's Eve, I sent out the final email and the last $5,000 came in online. Just asking many times just gets money. Major donors, right, are usually $10, $15, $25,000 and above. How do you cultivate those donors? Are they people that you know that music affected their lives, right? John Canning, who partially owns the Milwaukee Braves, used to always give $50,000 a year to the music school because he owned the Milwaukee Braves and music affected his life. And he was really, really keen on that, right? Foundations, concerts, galas, special events. Those are all important. We did a gala last year virtually because of COVID, and we brought in $700,000. And it was, I couldn't believe we did it virtually, believe it or not. Silly things like corporate giving and matches. Today, I received a $156 gift from somebody who works at Chase Bank, and Chase Bank matched it for $156. Many times your parents don't know that they can do this, right? Your school is a 501c3 if you work within their confines or their foundation of school districts. Many times you can get these matches that may seem like nothing, but they provide some decent money for your program. That band director that has 25,000, 37,000 to get 5 a year would be really happy for that. Rick, you look like you're going to say something.
Well, unfortunately, we're just getting to the top of the hour here.
Okay.
And I know you have so much to offer. Anybody, if you've seen some things flash by quickly that you would like maybe us to bring Tom back to spend some more time on in the future, I'll see if I can twist his arm to do that. Tom, one question that you might want to just check in the chat. What are some of the fundraising opportunities that you see coming to us that might not have been available before this new virtual landscape?
Well, so here's what's interesting about what happened during COVID. I'm sorry, did I stop sharing, I hope?
Yes.
Okay. During COVID, all the nonprofit organizations braced for less money, and they actually made more. One of the organizations I worked with went from a $2 million organization to $4.5 million because people saw the urgency and the need to keep community going and bring them together. So anything right now that's community driven, music programs are all community driven, showing the relationships, the importance, health related. Music obviously gives you good mental and physical health, right? If you can draw those lines and those connections and just talk about the altruistic benefits of music, you're probably going to be able to get money. And I think everybody in this call will be able to do that.
Thanks, Tom. Melissa, I see you have your hand up. Come on and ask your question. Or maybe you did that by mistake. No question for Melissa. Well, listen, I want to thank you all. Tom, thanks so much. I know you try to cram a whole lot into a short amount of time. We really appreciate that. We try to obviously be sensitive to administrators' times as well. They've got a lot on their plate. So yeah, let's see if we can maybe get you back again to expand on some of these things as we have people asking these questions. Next month, we are going to have Scott McKee join us. Scott is the executive director for the American Band College and the Western International Band Clinic. Some fantastic opportunities for you professionally and also for your kids. So Tom, parting words?
Just thank you. And I'm sorry I went over. If I'm happy to come back anytime and just spend a whole session on fundraising if that interests people, because I think that could be beneficial to folks across the country. Really, we're at the tip of the iceberg to get money for our schools and our districts, and our kids deserve it, and so do all of you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Have a great week. Stay warm up there in Chicago. Everybody else, thanks. Let us know if we can help you with anything, and if we don't see you at SCSVOA later this month. Hopefully we'll see you next month on our Wednesday seminar, and for sure, Tom Sommer Institute, sign up. It's going to be great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Tom.